I used to think betrayal had limits, that people, especially family, could only hurt you so much before life itself stepped in and said, enough. I believed that for a long time. Until that day. The morning of Lily's baby shower was almost cinematic. Sunlight poured through the kitchen windows, catching on the ribbons my wife had tied around mason jars. The house smelled of vanilla cupcakes and fresh tulips. For the first time in years, everything felt peaceful. Lily was glowing, her hand resting gently on the curve of her belly. She was my only daughter, my pride, my proof that something good had survived my marriage to Sandra. When she laughed, I saw the little girl who used to ride on my shoulders, who'd call me Daddy the Fixer, because she thought I could solve anything. That morning, I wanted to believe I still could. My second wife, Helen, moved around the room arranging pastries and balloons. "You okay?" she asked, squeezing my arm. "I'm good," I said, though my throat felt tight. Just proud. Truth was, I was nervous. Hosting the shower meant opening old wounds. Sandra had been a ghost in our lives for years, but her presence still lingered in whispers and shadows. Lily didn't talk about her mother much. She claimed it was better that way. I'd agreed. Guests began to arrive. Friends, co-workers, neighbors. Laughter filled the air, music hummed from the speakers. Everything looked picture perfect, a new chapter being written in pastel colors. Lily was radiant in a soft blue dress, Mark, her husband, hovering protectively nearby. They looked like the future. I remember thinking that maybe, just maybe, the past had finally loosened its grip. Then the doorbell rang. A harmless sound. A tiny chime that split my world in two. Helen went to open it. I heard her voice catch, and then I saw her, Sandra, my ex-wife, my history dressed in expensive perfume and polished cruelty. She stood in the doorway like she owned the air itself, and in her arms was a baby who looked exactly like Lily. The room froze. The music stopped. Every smile faltered. I heard someone drop a glass, the soft clink echoing in the silence. "Hello, everyone," Sandra said sweetly, stepping inside. "I hope I'm not too late for the celebration." My stomach turned to ice. "What are you doing here?" "Oh, don't be so cold, Dawn." She smiled, a smile I'd once mistaken for warmth. "I'm family too, remember?" Lily's face went pale. "Mom?" Her voice was trembling. Why do you have a baby?" Sandra looked down at the infant and then back up at us, her expression a cruel imitation of innocence. "Because, sweetheart," she said, "this is my grandchild." The words didn't register at first. My mind tried to make sense of them, to find a path through the absurdity. But then she kept going. "My son, Michael," she said, "is the father. Her son, from her second marriage." I turned to look at Lily. Her hand covered her mouth. Mark's face went white. Sandra adjusted the blanket around the baby, her tone almost casual. "Which means," she continued, her eyes locking onto Mark, "your husband is the father of both my grandchild and yours." It was like the air was punched out of the room. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered, "Oh my God." I felt myself sway. The world tilted. Lily shook her head violently. No, that's not true." Sandra's smile sharpened. "Isn't it? Ask him." Mark's lips parted, but no sound came out. His silence said more than words ever could. Lily stumbled backward, one hand gripping the table for balance. The cake wobbled, toppled, crashed to the floor. She looked at him, at me, at everyone, then her knees buckled. "Lily!" I lunged forward, catching her before she hit the ground. Panic erupted around us. Guests shouted, someone called for water, someone else dialed 911. Sandra just stood there, rocking that baby like it was a victory trophy. Her eyes met mine, and in them I saw what I'd always feared, satisfaction. The paramedics came. They took Lily to the hospital. Mark tried to follow, but I blocked his way. My voice came out low and steady, even though my insides were burning. "You've done enough." He didn't argue. He just looked at me like a man who'd been caught stealing from God, and realized the price. Hours later, the guests were gone. The house was quiet again, but not the same kind of quiet. This was the silence that follows destruction, the kind that hums like static in your ears. I walked through the mess, overturned chairs, scattered wrapping paper, half-eaten food. A single pink balloon floated near the ceiling, tethered to nothing. I picked up the baby shower invitation from the counter. "Celebrating new life," it said in gold letters. I laughed, a dry, broken sound that didn't feel human. My reflection in the window looked older than I remembered. I thought about Sandra's face as she'd walked in, the deliberate cruelty, the timing. She'd known exactly what she was doing. I thought I'd escaped her grip years ago, but maybe you never really escape people like that. Maybe they just wait for the right moment to remind you they still own a piece of your story. That night, I sat alone in the dark, surrounded by wilted flowers and the faint scent of vanilla. The house that had been filled with joy a few hours earlier now felt like a crime scene. And for the first time in years, I felt the same humiliation. I'd known when our marriage ended. The courtroom whispers, the pitying looks, the weight of being the fool again. I used to think betrayal had limits, that once someone shattered you, there wasn't much left to break. But as I stared at the deflated balloons and the ruined cake, I realized how wrong I'd been. Some wounds never stop echoing. Grief doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers in questions that scratch at your peace. That week, the house became a museum of silence. The smell of frosting and roses from the baby shower lingered like an insult. Everywhere I looked, the couch where Lily had sat opening gifts, the kitchen where laughter had once lived. It felt like walking through a memory I didn't consent to remember. I kept replaying it all in my head. Sandra's smirk, the baby's face, Mark's stuttered excuses, my daughter's collapse. Betrayal is a strange kind of déjà vu. You don't just see it happen. You remember how it's always been waiting for you. I told myself I wouldn't dig. I told myself time would explain. But men like me, men who've lived through women like Sandra, don't rest until every lie is cornered and dragged into the light. So I started quietly. I called one of Lily's friends, Emma, who'd helped organize the shower. She sounded shaken, her voice low. "I thought your ex-wife showing up was weird," she said, "but I didn't think she'd actually do that." I asked if she'd seen Sandra before that day. A pause then. Once, a few weeks ago. She came to the salon where Lily gets her hair done, asked about the registry, said she wanted to send something special. She was charming, like she always is. That was Sandra's gift. Charm as a weapon. Sugar over arsenic. She never shouted, never cursed. She smiled you into surrender. That night I sat in my study, the old photo album spread across the table. Sandra in her 20s, dazzling, magnetic, the kind of woman who could make you feel like you were lucky just to stand next to her. I remembered how she used to whisper things like, "You wouldn't survive without me," and how I used to laugh, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. I'd left her years ago, but she hadn't left me. I visited Lily 2 days later. She was pale, wrapped in a blanket, her wedding ring sitting on the coffee table beside a cold cup of tea. She tried to smile. "Dad," she said, "I don't know where to start." "Start with the truth," I said gently. She hesitated, eyes welling up. I knew, Dad. Those 2 words cracked something in me. She told me how she'd discovered the affair months earlier, how one night, Mark's phone buzzed while he was in the shower, and curiosity turned into a nightmare. Photos, messages, a picture of a newborn she didn't recognize, and a name, Michael, Sandra's son from her second marriage. Lily's voice broke. I confronted him. He said it was a mistake, that it didn't mean anything, that she didn't mean anything. She? I asked. Michael's girlfriend, she said. But Mom, she knew. She told me to stay quiet, said marriage isn't perfect, that forgiveness was my duty. She said people would judge me for leaving while pregnant. I stared at her, my heart pounding. Sandra told you that? Lily nodded. She said she'd handle it, that she'd make sure the truth came out the right way. And she had. Just not the way Lily imagined. After that conversation, I couldn't sleep. I'd wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning, sit in the dark living room, and scroll through old videos. Lily at 5 years old, dancing in her pajamas, calling me super dad. I kept wondering, when did that innocence turn into fear? When did my daughter start believing that silence was safer than truth? One night, I poured myself a drink and stared at the divorce papers I'd kept all these years. I remembered the courtroom, Sandra's voice trembling at just the right moments, the tears that came on cue. She'd turned my friends, my own parents, even parts of Lily against me. "He's cold," she'd said. "He doesn't care," and the judge had believed her. Everyone did. She humiliated me once back then, stripped my reputation bare in front of strangers, and now she'd done it again. Not in court, but in my home, in front of everyone who mattered. 2 days later, she called. "Don," she said sweetly, "how's Lily? Recovering?" My jaw tightened. "You've done enough, Sandra. Don't sound so ungrateful," she purred. "I just wanted you to know how it feels, to raise someone else's mistake." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "What did you say?" "You heard me," she said, her tone turning sharp. "You always thought you were the good parent, the victim. But maybe you passed down more than you realize. Maybe pain is the only thing you were ever capable of giving." Then she hung up. I sat there staring at the phone, shaking. She'd planned it all. The timing, the entrance, the cruelty. She didn't just want to embarrass me. She wanted to inherit her power through destruction. It wasn't about Mark or Lily. It was about me. About rewriting our family story so she'd still be the author. That realization hollowed me out. I stopped eating for a few days. My wife worried, but I couldn't explain it. I wasn't angry anymore, and I was ashamed. Ashamed that after all these years, Sandra still had the power to script my emotions. Eventually, I called her and asked to meet. She agreed immediately, like she'd been waiting. We met at a small cafe near the old courthouse. Fitting, somehow. She looked almost the same, perfectly composed. That same perfume I'd once thought smelled like sophistication, but now just reeked of control. "You look tired," she said, sipping her coffee. "You look satisfied," I replied. A smile played on her lips. "You always were dramatic. Why did you do it, Sandra? Why humiliate Lily like that? She's your daughter too." Her eyes sharpened. "Because she needed to see who you really are. You think you're the protector, the savior, but you create weakness. People who need you depend on you. I just set her free from that illusion. That's not freedom. That's cruelty." She leaned forward, her voice lowering. "Pain, Don, is the only inheritance you ever gave us. I just passed it along." Her words sliced through me. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. "You've always hated yourself," I said finally. "You just found new ways to make everyone else feel it too." She laughed softly, almost pitying. Still pretending to be noble, I stood up. "No, just done pretending you matter." I walked out, leaving her mid-sentence, the rain starting to fall as I stepped into the street. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to look back. That night I sat alone, the house dark except for the blue glow of the TV. Old home videos flickered across the screen, Lily's first steps, Sandra's voice in the background cheering. I realized that even in those happy moments she'd been performing, and I'd mistaken performance for love. I closed my eyes, breathing in the quiet. Somewhere between those flickering frames and the woman she became, my daughter had inherited my silence. But maybe she didn't have to keep it. I whispered it aloud. To no one in particular. She didn't just ruin the day, she rewrote our family story. And now, it was up to me to write an ending she couldn't touch. It's strange how silence can become a kind of medicine. For weeks after the baby shower, the house felt haunted by noise that no longer existed. The laughter that once promised a new beginning, the cries that turned into accusations, the door that closed on everything we thought we knew. But then little by little, quiet began to take its place. Lily moved back in with us. She started therapy, began to eat again, began to look me in the eyes without that flicker of apology she carried like a scar. I drove her to her appointments but never asked what was said inside. That was new for me, restraint. I'd spent my entire life trying to fix things, smoothing over other people's chaos like plaster on a wall full of cracks. This time I didn't. I just listened. Mark tried to contact her. Messages, flowers, even tears at our doorstep. But Lily didn't open the door. Watching her finally say no was like watching someone learn to breathe underwater. Painful, but miraculous. When the baby came, it was a stormy night. Rain hammered against the hospital windows, thunder rumbling like a reminder that even creation comes with noise and lightning. I stood beside her bed as she held her child, my grandchild, small, warm, and impossibly innocent. There was something about that tiny heartbeat that made everything else seem smaller. All the betrayal, the shame, They were still there but muted like echoes fading down a long hallway. Then Sandra showed up. I should have known she would. She had a knack for arriving just when peace was beginning to take root. I saw her through the glass, her umbrella dripping, her expression composed but expectant. The nurses looked uncertain. She introduced herself as the grandmother. I walked out into the hallway before she could come any closer. "Sandra," I said. "Dawn." Her voice was sweet, too sweet. "I just want to see the baby." "No," she blinked, surprised. "You can't keep me from—" "I can," I said quietly. "And I will." For the first time, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't list her sins, a reminder of the wreckage she'd caused. I just looked at her and she must have seen it. The exhaustion, the calm, the line finally drawn. "This isn't about punishment," I said. "It's about peace. And you don't get to break that again." Her expression twisted just slightly. Confusion, anger, disbelief. She'd built her identity on getting reactions, and I wasn't giving her one. She turned away, muttering something about ownership and blood. But I didn't hear the rest. I walked back to Lily's room, and when I looked down at that baby, I realized something had shifted in me. Forgiveness isn't a single act. It's a refusal to keep carrying what doesn't belong to you anymore. For years, I thought forgiveness meant opening the door again, pretending the damage wasn't there. But standing in that hospital, I understood it differently. Forgiveness wasn't reconciliation. It was release. I went home that night and sat by the window with a cup of tea. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, the streetlights casting soft halos across the pavement. I thought about all the years I'd spent trapped in the echo of Sandra's voice, her criticisms, her manipulations, her need to win. And I realized I'd let those echoes define me long after she'd stopped speaking them. Now finally I could let them fade. A few days later, I visited Lily and the baby again. She was sitting by the window, humming, the child asleep in her arms. There was peace in her face, fragile but real. "Dad," she said softly, "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to," I said. "Just live your life without her shadow over it." She smiled, tired but genuine. "I think I finally can." I touched the baby's tiny hand. "You know," I said, half to myself, "I thought your mother's baby shower was ruined forever. But maybe it wasn't. Maybe that was the day everything broke because it had to." Lily looked at me curiously. I smiled faintly. I thought she brought that child to mock me. But maybe life was just holding up a mirror, showing me what I still needed to let go of. Outside, the rain stopped completely. The world felt washed clean. Some wounds never stop echoing. But if you stop listening, truly stop, the sound fades. And in the silence that follows, you can finally hear something else. Your own voice, steady and unbroken. True strength isn't found in revenge. It's in the quiet refusal to let humiliation define your legacy. Pain echoes across generations, but so does healing. If someone is brave enough to end the noise, comment. What would you have done if your ex tried to humiliate you like that? Subscribe. For more real-life stories of resilience, betrayal, and redemption, follow and support the channel.